Well, hey there, guys. It's Corinna from mydigitalfarmer.com and from sharedlegacyfarms.com. Hope you guys are doing great today. I am coming in for my weekly marketing training. Today I'm going to talk about what might end up being a little bit of a contentious topic, the weekly email strategy that I use to help brand and market my farm business. And when you study marketing, specifically in the digital marketing space, they recommend that you have a weekly email that goes out to your list. And I have to confess that when I first learned that, I was a little skeptical because I thought, I don't want people to get sick and tired of getting emails. I don't like getting tons of emails in my inbox. And there are many that I click and just delete every single day, and sometimes I even unsubscribe. And that is sort of the dreaded fear that we all have, right? That we're going to work so hard to get these leads on our list, and then what if they unsubscribe because we over communicate with them? So I had all of those fears when I first heard this tip from my mentors. You need to be writing a weekly email. So I'm here today to kind of talk you through what does that really mean, the weekly email, and what would that look like if you tried to apply it into a brick and mortar business like we have. So I actually do an almost weekly email, and I kind of want to walk you through this process, why I do it that way. I don't think it's for everyone, but I would like for you to hear me out if you're willing and just kind of listen to what I think are, the elements of this process of putting together weekly email and why it might have some value. And I think that you can take these tips that I'm going to share and kind of tweak it for whatever your particular business strategy is. You're going to make it your own, but I think there are some elements in here that you might pull some value away with. All right. So first of all, I want to talk about why is it that people recommend in the digital marketing space to send a weekly email or a bi-weekly email. Maybe it's not every week, but it's some kind of consistently sent out email. And the first reason behind this is because it affects your sender reputation. I did a whole separate video all about how to avoid the email promotions tab. I'll link it later in the comments. But one of the things that the email gods out there score your reputation on is, are you consistent? Are you someone that regularly sends an email out to this audience? Or do you just periodically blast one out, every, 6 weeks here, and then 8 weeks here, and then 1 week here, because that flags it as potentially spam. And so that's just something to think about. Like, there's value in having a consistent quote unquote schedule where it's roughly every 2 weeks, roughly every 3 weeks, because somebody is kind of tracking that. Okay. But probably more important, I think, for having a consistent email that goes out to your list is because it keeps you top of mind. Because the thing is that people do not really think about you a lot. I know it's like we're all about branding and we're like, we're going to people think about us a lot. No, the thing is they're really just thinking about their own lives. And so if we don't follow up with an email on a consistent basis and kind of stay on their radar, we sort of just fall off their consciousness level, right? They're not remembering that they downloaded a PDF from you 5 months ago. They're going to be like, who is this sending this email to me? So when we have kind of a consistent check-in moment, it's like, oh, there's that brand again, okay? And it just keeps us top of mind. Will they always buy from you right away? Probably not, but it's this process of warming up. And then when their taxi light is on, when they're ready for business and they're really trying to finally solve a problem that manifests itself, they're going to think of your brand first because you've been sort of on their radar. Okay, something to think about. And then finally, if you write really good emails, if you're actually a good writer, people will open them up and they will look forward to reading them. So that may not be you. Okay, you may not be a great writer yet. Or you may not ever be a great writer. Maybe you have to find someone else on your team who can do that. But I think that's one of the elements that some of these bigger brands that do this weekly email, they have a good writer on staff. They have someone who takes the time to write a funny story or share an anecdote or make someone chuckle or actually teach something really valuable that ideal customer avatar really wants to learn. And so you sort of train your customer, if you write well, they're like, when they see your email come through, they're like, wow, 80% of the time when I open those, it's really good. So I'm probably going to open it again. I do have one person that I get emails from who does that for me, where I feel like every time I open the email, it's actually really good stuff, and I almost always open the emails. So just think about that. If you are actually known for writing good emails and you really study this craft, that really helps, okay? So the trick is that we have to just get better at how to write this weekly email. That's part of it, okay? And that may be a little hard to look in the mirror and be like, oh, this isn't a priority. This isn't something I want to spend time on. If you want to get good at this, you do have to work at it a little bit. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, all right? Before I jump into kind of these 5 elements of how I go about writing my weekly email to sort of help you, I do want to just say this, because I know there's some of you out there that are still like, email fatigue. I will not send out a weekly email. That's okay, okay? I don't want to force this down your throats. But I do want to say that only you know your audience. I do not know your audience as well as you do. So if you know they would absolutely hate the weekly or bi-weekly email, then you should not send it, okay? But for those of you who don't really know that yet, then let's talk this through. How do we work this out? Because only you know your open rates, you know how your customers are going to take this, and your audience is different than mine. So I happen to be, I think, fairly good at writing content, and so I think that's why this is working so well for me. So I'm just going to kind of share with you my story, okay? So here we go. I'm going to share with you kind of the 6 elements that I think that I sort of think through when I sit down every Monday or Sunday to map out what my email is going to be for my customers. Okay, so here's the process. Number 1, I want to say this. I segment my audience. So I don't want you to think that I just sit down and write one email and just send it to all subscribers and boom, there it goes. I think that's a mistake. And they actually teach in the online marketing space that you should write different versions of the email to your different audiences. Now I know your mind's blowing up and you're like, oh my God, I do not have time for that. So if you don't have time for that, then just do a blast. But I just want you to think about this. You actually need to really ask this question. Who is your audience that you are writing this to? And if you look at your giant email list, or maybe your small email list, within the scope of that email list, you have different kinds of people, right? If you're a farm. So I have people who are just getting to know me. They just subscribed. Maybe they downloaded a freebie and they have started getting drip content, like an email drip sequence from me, okay? So they're really cold. They don't know a lot about me yet. And I can't talk to them the same way, okay? Then I have my farmers, I have you guys. That's a whole different tag in my system. So I'm certainly not going to send you the content that I'm going to send to all my CSA members, okay? Or the rest of my list for that matter. I have people that are just in the academy who purchased the SL Farms Academy and who are expecting a weekly, or right now in this season, a monthly content release within the academy. So they're expecting to hear from me, but not a ton. And then I have people who are in my CSA, okay? These are my core flagship people who, really want to hear from me a lot. I'm friends with a lot of them. And so I have a totally different relationship with them. So if you know kind of these different brackets of your audience and what the commitment level is for each of them, that's going to help you know, A, how frequently you need to email them, what's appropriate, and what you talk about. So for example, my farmers, I do right now send you an email every week based on what I teach in this video. I may move that to every 2 weeks once the season starts just because of overwhelm, right? My academy, I usually write them every 2 or 3 weeks. My CSA members are every week because they are my core people and they love me and they're in my Facebook group and I have stuff to say to them every week, okay? So first of all, just think about who are the different elements in your audience and consider segmenting them. If you don't have tags or different lists within your email service provider that allow you to do that, think about doing that, because then you can take this kind of one piece of content that you're going to write in this email and you just sort of tweak it, you tailor it and have a different voice. Sometimes it's a completely different message too. So I will often write different versions of the same information 2 or 3 different times based on who I'm speaking to. But sometimes the topic doesn't overlap because, for example, the CSA members might need to hear a very important announcement message and that trumps the other message that's going to the other people in my list, okay? So consider your audience. What could you tell them about? What do they need to know? Maybe there's something they actually need to know. And then these are kind of three words that I think about. How can you inspire, educate, or entertain them? Okay, so when I'm thinking about topics and what we're going to cover, it's inspire, educate, or entertain. So educate is kind of like I'm going to teach them something or I'm going to announce something. So let's move into kind of the second thing I think about. So first is like, okay, who is this audience? And recognizing that I may actually need to segment it. I'm going to have to write a couple different versions, and the tweaking process is pretty simple. It's like I write the main one first and then I just tweak the second one later. But the second question I ask is, all right, how do I decide what to write about? And this is the hard part, right? If we have to write a regular email, that's always like, oh crap, it's Sunday night, I have to write my email. What am I supposed to talk about? Now, first of all, I want to say, please listen to me. If you can't think of anything to write about, don't send a weekly email, okay? This is one of those moments where you do not want to train your people to open up emails that really don't have anything important to say, because then you're just training them that this is not always valuable, so I don't always need to open it. So it's okay if you skip, all right? There are times when I'm like, oh, I can't think of anything, and then I go for 2 or 3 weeks without writing the academy, and I'm like, you know what, it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be all right. But if you are trying to figure out some categories, here's what I want you to think about. When I sit down and brainstorm, I kind of look at that educate, inspire, and entertain, but I also think about these kind of 5 things. Number 1, announcements. Is there anything that's really important that needs to be announced? So often this might be like more of a transactional kind of email, but in the case of my CSA members, for instance, I needed to announce to them that, hey, I need you to pay, like I need the second part of your deposit. Okay, so sometimes there are just things that transactionally need to happen, and that can count as your weekly email. Okay, or in the case of this week, the email that went out to my list was all about announcing the Instant Pot Challenge, that I am starting an Instant Pot Challenge on April 1st for 2 weeks. And here's how it's working. I want to invite you to be a part of it. Here are the rules. Here's the prize. Okay, so that was an announcement of some piece of content that I had created to sort of drive engagement for this month of April. Now, another thing that you could do, one of the other 5 categories when you're thinking about what to talk about, is sell something. So is there an opportunity for you to upsell a particular product, or announce, I'm going to be at the market on this day, here's what's going to be for sale, or here's my link to the store, or hey, do you know anybody who might want to join our CSA? If you want to join our CSA, it's open now. Okay. A couple weeks ago, it was last week, I sent an email out to my list, my CSA members, trying to upsell a fruit share. So I had gone and done a video at the orchard who's partnering to do our fruit share. And the video turned out really well. It was getting a lot of traction on Facebook. And so I basically just talked about that video in this email. And I said, hey, I want you to know that not all of you have a fruit share. I don't even know if all of you are aware that I have a fruit share. So here's a video I did with the guy who is our fruit share provider. We're rebranding it this year. It's going to be a new packaging. We're really excited. And I sent that out basically as a sales email. And I got a ton of people. I have like 30 shares now, 31 shares that I've sold as a result of that email. So sometimes you can use email to just sell something. Another category is I tell a story. Stories are so powerful, by the way. So I'll just try to think of something that happened in my life. It's not always on the farm either. It might just be a scenario that happened with my kids, or if I'm volunteering in the community, or with my friends, and I'll just tell the story. And then I always try to find some kind of like nugget or a life lesson out of it that somehow relates to something that my brand stands for. And there's no call to action. There's no like, hey, I want you to do this now. It's just trying to help people feel like I'm a part of this brand, and I like this person who's writing me. She stands for something that I believe in. She aligns with the values that I align with. So that is something that I throw into the mix every now and then if I have a really great story. Let me give you an example. Last year, we had some seasonal workers who were having their car broke down in Atlanta as they were trying to get here. And so I just told a story. We ended up raising a bunch of money to help them, and it was this big, massive rescue effort to get them up here up to the farm. And I spent a whole email just telling this amazing story about how this whole community of people came around this family and found a way to get them up here. And that was really that was it. But it was beautiful, and you got to the end of it and you felt like, oh my gosh, this farm does great things. This farm cares about the community and has a way of leveraging community connections and has this network, and that's awesome. So just finding really neat stories like that can be another way to write an email. Things happening on the farm is another category. So right now we're doing this big greenhouse build right outside my kitchen door there. My husband is digging the water line today. My gosh, this has been going on for like 6 weeks. But I feel like this is a major event, a construction project on the farm, and I can talk about that. That can be the content, the story of the farm. Or the first time you go out and plant something in the field, that could be the content of the email. That's exciting. We're beginning this process. So I'm always looking for good just stories, like any journalist. Like, what's a cool story or thing happening on the farm behind the scenes that I can target? So almost picture like if I were going to write a newsletter article, right, for the week for my newsletter, for my CSA newsletter, what would that one article be? And that can be the content of your weekly email. And then finally, this is a big one. This is the one I probably fall onto most of the time. It's teach something. I call this my content release. So every month I try to, of the off season, I try to have one content release, one new thing that I'm going to teach, and then things spiral around that. So I want to encourage you, if you haven't yet watched it, there's a video called the Pentagon Method, where I show like the 5 points of the Pentagon, how I create like one basic piece of content, and then there are 5 places where I repurpose that content and use excuses to talk about it. The email is one of those 5 points of the Pentagon. So last couple weeks ago, I made beef jerky, believe it or not, for the first time in my dehydrator. And so I made a video about that. I put it into the Academy, and then that becomes the topic. I can talk about, hey, I learned how to do beef jerky. Here's a picture. Here's the video link. You can go watch it to learn how to do it yourself. And that can become the content of the email. So there is kind of, we're talking about this specific email right now, but when you widen out, there's sort of a bigger strategy at play here. When I'm working on my branding and marketing, I'm always thinking about what's the content release that I can put out to help me with engagement. So, the beef jerky might have been what it was a few weeks ago. Next week, I start the Instant Pot Challenge. So that was a wider angle kind of decision. I need something to talk about for the month of April so that I can write about it in my emails. I can put it on my Facebook posts or Instagram, or put it on a blog post, make a video about it, right? So I come up with these topics, and then the email becomes just one way to talk about it. So look for that video, the Pentagon Method. I think that will also help kind of flesh out today's teaching. So I keep kind of a running list of ideas as they come to me of what these content releases could be, or these topics, announcements, things that I need people to know. And I kind of put them on my little checklist on my clipboard, on my to-do list. So sometimes there's kind of a pile of them, believe it or not. Last week, I sent out an email to my Academy list about the beef jerky video, but I did not send it to my CSA members because they needed to get a more important announcement in their email that sort of trumped the jerky thing, all right? So I sort of have on the back burner, I'm like, well, I could always send an email out to my CSA members about the jerky video. That hasn't happened yet. So there's sort of just this running list that I keep track of to help me. I also want to mention here that I do not sell something in every email. I really, really feel strongly about that. Your weekly email should not always be a sales email. It should not always be, hey, this is what I'm going to have at the farmer's market this weekend. If that's all you ever put in there, people will learn that, oh, that's just going to be a sales email. So I feel like you at least need to mix it up a little bit so that sometimes there's value add, there's something you're teaching or educating them on in a different way. So just wanted to say that. Okay, number 3, once I know what my topic is, okay, I've sort of landed on, okay, I'm going to write about this fruit share video that I did at the orchard, okay? Then I sit down, and the very first sentence that I write, before I even write dear whoever, is I write the call to action. I write what it is that I want them to do as a result of reading this email. That's the first thing I write, because that's sort of like my target. I know then as I'm writing, this is where everything is leading to. I'm trying to get them to click the video and watch the video, or I'm trying to get them to buy the fruit share. I'm trying to get them to download the freebie PDF that I made for them, because I know it's going to be helpful. I want them to go download the newsletter that I made for the CSA people this week, or whatever. Answer this poll, write me back, send me an email that answers this question, fill out my survey. Whatever that call to action is, write it first. It has to start there. And I put it in two places usually. I'll have it somewhere kind of near the end of the email, but I also have it in the PS in most cases as sort of a reminder. And there's a reason for that, because people often when they open emails will scan the email first, and they'll usually go all the way down and check the PS section, and they'll usually always read the PS section. So that's where your most important message should be. And if you've done a good job of sort of formatting your email and putting line breaks and putting some headers and bolding some things to draw the eye down, they might actually go back and sort of scan and skim the email again and read the content, okay? So that's step number 3, is I always write the call to action. Okay, number 4, my next thing that I do is I usually try to insert a picture of some sort. So I don't do I know that some of you have email service providers that allow you to actually make cool, beautiful formatted looking newsletters. I don't really do that. I don't like doing that personally, because I like to get emails that look more like a text letter. And that's just my choice. Some of you do it the other way, and that's fine. So I need to insert some kind of a picture just to break up the text and again, draw kind of attention to something. So if it works, if it makes sense, I will find some kind of an image that goes along with the content and the topic, and I'll make it in Canva as a JPEG or a PNG file, download it to my computer, and then upload it into the actual email itself, and then kind of size it so that it's right there, I don't know, after like maybe the first paragraph or second paragraph. And I feel like it draws the attention, the eye's attention to it, and kind of keeps them moving forward. So sometimes it's a YouTube thumbnail image or a picture of the topic. So for the example of the email that I sent to my CSA members to try to get them to buy this fruit share, I took a screenshot of the video that I took live on Facebook with Ben out at the quarry. And then I overlaid like a YouTube like arrow image on it in Canva so that it looked like a YouTube sort of thumbnail, and then downloaded that image. So when someone opens the email, it looks like a video thumbnail, and it makes them want to click on it to play it. And of course, I've turned it into a live link so that when they do that, it takes them right to that video so that they can watch it. Okay, so that's a little trick that I learned from some of my internet mentors. It's worked really well for me. Something to think about. I feel like the image really helps people. Okay, number 5. So I've got my call to action in place. I've got the image that's kind of in the center, all right? Now I have to fill in the gaps around it. And the secret to this, and I'm not going to be able to be like, this is exactly what you say, folks. I'm sorry, I don't know how to teach you how to do that. But I will say that I know how to speak conversationally. And when I write, you may have noticed that if you're actually on the Digital Farmer list and you're getting my weekly emails about these videos, you may have noticed that I write conversationally. I feel like I have a little bit of a sarcastic edge. When you get to know me, you'll if you ever meet me, you'll see that. I have a little bit of sarcasm, a little bit of a bite. And I try to reflect that in how I talk. If you were to sit down here at my kitchen table and we were to have a chat about something, I can be a little flippant. I can, sometimes I can just say like a quick, 3-word sentence. I just talk. I write how I talk. And I use carriage returns. I use spaces between sentences. I hardly ever have a paragraph longer than 2 sentences because I just feel like that reflects how we talk. We speak kind of stream of consciousness. So that's how I fill in the rest. I try to make it sound like an exciting story. I'll try to insert questions that I know my audience is thinking to kind of break up the story a little bit and pause and then move in. I'll use the ... ellipsis to pull people into the next paragraph. But I just fill in the gaps. I'll either tell the story, I'll do the announcement, I'll try to inspire, or I'll educate them. And that's kind of where I end up. So if you want to watch, this is kind of the part where I want to encourage you, if you haven't already, to watch the video all about copywriting tips. I think I share like 12 copywriting tips. Really, really good stuff. It's probably one of the best I've ever done. Very practical information. I'll make sure I link it in the comments later. That's going to give you a lot of gold in terms of how to format, some of the rules of writing when you're writing emails, so that people actually finish and get to the end. Okay, my very last thing I want to say in this training is after you have finished the email, you just need to test it, okay? Test, test, test. So send it out there, launch it out to your list, and do it again the next week, do it again the next week. And if you find that your open rates drop, okay, or you just find no one's engaging, or then you will know to make adjustments. You will tweak your strategy, okay? So I recommend trying to do it in the heat of the season, definitely doing it every week. In the off season, not every week, probably every 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Some people say they do it every month. It really depends on your audience. But this is where you test. You just have to try it and see what works for your lifestyle, frankly, but also for your customers. And I think you'll find that the core members, your CSA members who are big buyers, they actually like hearing from you as frequently as one a week if you're writing well. Now, I want to address before I end this fear of the unsubscribe and the email fatigue piece one more time, because I feel like I just need to say this. This is an important thing to understand. Not everyone who is on your list or who has subscribed to your list is your customer avatar. And so when you start writing and you're trying to build relationship with them, because that's what email is, right? We're trying to be social. We're trying to connect with them. And if the way that we're trying to do that isn't working and they're not resonating with you, then maybe, just maybe, it could be that you're writing too much, okay? I'll give you that. But maybe it's because you're just not the best fit for them, or they're not the best fit for you. And so you have to be willing to just consider that as much as you want to attract your ideal customer, you will also repel other people who are not your ideal customer. And maybe that's okay. Maybe they shouldn't be on your list, because we really want to be doing as much as we can to attract and warm up and speak to the people that love us and that are going to be great customers and that are going to be a great investment for us. Not totally blowing off people who aren't, but just realize that there are going to be people who won't connect, and that's maybe okay. So as you go through this process and you try to write more frequently and you're thinking about, oh, but what if people don't like it and unsubscribe? Maybe those people shouldn't be on the list to begin with. Maybe, okay? Now, I might have a whole bunch of nasty emails coming at me right now. That's fine. But that's just something that I wrestle with. I still struggle with it, but I kind of lean into that a little bit. It's like, well, not everyone is going to be a great fit for my brand and my voice and the way that I like to communicate, and maybe that's okay. All right? Email is not the only way we talk to people, by the way. We also use social, right? We also use video. We also use in-person. But email can be a powerful way to connect with your people, keep things top of mind. And so this was my process for how I go through it. Let me wrap it up one more time. First of all, step 1, segment your audience. Know who it is that you're speaking to. Get really clear about who's my audience. Step number 2, think about what is your topic going to be. And I gave you 5 different examples for you to think about. Once you decide on your topic, write your call to action first. Step 4, in my case, I always insert some kind of visual image to draw the eye. And then step 5, I fill in the gaps around it, following some of those copywriting rules that I referenced. And finally, you've got to be willing to test and tweak as you go. All right? Cool. That's my training for today. Listen, if you don't have a great email service provider that you love, I want to recommend the one that I use, which is ConvertKit. You can go to mydigitalfarmer.com/ConvertKit to learn about it. They have a special kind of promotion going on right now too. So I think you can try it out for 30 days, but they've got this big challenge going on where you can actually, I think you can even if you do the challenge, they have prizes or something. So check it out if you're looking into that. If you already have one, stick with it and you like it, go for it. You can do this practice in any email service provider that's out there. Thanks for joining me. Sarah, I'm glad it was helpful. I'm glad you were here. And Katie, yes, I am wearing the shirt. Keep the tractor running. Go, Chris. All right, take care, guys. Have an awesome weekend, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.